Was moving to Disney World the best thing I've ever done? Or is it my biggest regret? This is a conversation that comes up more often than you might think. Then again, lots of people, they dream of moving to their favorite vacation destination, but it's not as common for people to actually make the leap. And so people have a lot of questions. They want to know like the pros and cons and how people like me feel about the decisions that we've made. This has actually been coming up a lot recently. I had a few people ask me about what my thoughts were. Some people wanted to know if my views on living here have changed since I moved here a few years ago. And so we're going to talk about it. So get cozy. I have a delicious tea right here. This is a London Fog. For those of you who are curious, I absolutely love this. I've got a nice cozy blanket because it's kind of chilly out, even though it's like beautiful. It's like perfect weather, but still it's nice to be cozy. So get yourself cozy and let's dig in. So just like with anywhere else, living here in Central Florida, living in Florida, living near Walt Disney World has its pros and cons. And I want to outline some of them with you today. But before I even jump in, I do want to be clear that we're talking about living near Walt Disney World right now, but this could apply to any major vacation destination. And as someone who's lived in major vacation destinations before, I can say that with confidence. And just like with anything else, people have their preferences, but I've narrowed things down to in my opinion, the 3 best and worst things about living in this area, living so close to the magic. And we're starting with the pros. So in no particular order, number 1, there's always something to do. No matter what you're into, there's always something going on. In fact, there's often too much to do. I've been down here for however many years it's been now, a few, and I still find things that I add to my list of things to do, and there are still things that I don't get to. Every year, every season. The list just keeps getting carried over from year to year, and no matter how hard I try, there's just not enough days in the week sometimes to do absolutely everything there is to do. And if you're anything like me, you like to be busy, or at least you like to have options, that can make living in a vacation destination very appealing. On top of that, there's a lot of new and interesting stuff that's always rotating out. There's always new restaurants to try, there's always new exhibits to see, there's always new offerings from whatever it is, whether it's theme parks or museums, there's always something going on, like I said. And so that really appeals to me. That is one of the great things about living in a vacation destination, and I personally wouldn't have it any other way. Okay, next up on our list, number 2, there's a vibe that you get from places where people want to be that you just don't get from some other places. And look, this is one of those things that's it's a little bit hard to understand if you've never experienced it for yourself, but there are some places where people are just existing in that place. They don't want to leave. Leaving isn't even something that they would consider as an option. They don't really want to be there though. Have you ever been in a place like that where people are itching to get out but just don't? Maybe because they can't, maybe because they won't. Then there are places where people want to be. They're enthusiastic about that place, whether they were born and raised there and they just love it, whether they moved there from somewhere else, or whether they're vacationing there and they're just bringing that vibe with them. And I don't know, it just feels like there's something in the air, and it's in the air here in the Walt Disney World area. I know it sounds like super cliche, super Disney adult to say there's a magic here, but it really kind of does feel like there is. Also, again, this is something that I've experienced elsewhere. This isn't just a Disney thing. There's something special about places where people want to be. And I like that. So that's another one of the reasons that I like living down here. And I do think that it's a pro. It's a pro of living here in the Walt Disney World area. That thing, it's in the air. So number 3 on our list in the pros column is diversity. This is a very diverse place, both in the people that live here, but also in the type of environments that you can find in what I'm going to call the immediate vicinity. So first and foremost, when it comes to people, there are a ton of different people from a ton of different places that live in this area, and they all have such rich culture that you really have access to it. It's like, it's part of day to day when you live in this area. And I have to tell you, I love that. I am from a place where I was surrounded by different people from different places, and it really does feel like a melting pot. And I think that that's fantastic. It's, like I said, it's my style. But something that I think is particularly unique when it comes to choosing this area of Florida that I haven't really seen elsewhere. And I mean, I've traveled all over the country, although I haven't seen absolutely every corner, but it seems to be unique, in my opinion, to Florida, is just how many different types of environment are, again, in that immediate vicinity. So if we're talking about Walt Disney World, for example, right? If you want to live in the city, you want to live like in a high-rise apartment or condo, you have access to that within like 30 or 45 minutes of Walt Disney World. And you know what else is available to you like 30 minutes away from, again, Walt Disney World? A beautiful lake town. Want to live like on a ranch? Like 30 minutes the other direction, again, from Walt Disney World, maybe 45. 20, 30 minutes away, you've got a beautiful park to just wander around and enjoy, feel like you're in the middle of nowhere. An hour one direction, and you're at the beach. An hour the other direction, give or take, of course, and you're at the other beach. There is such a wide range of places to choose from, and that really does make it so that there's a little something for everybody without having to really go too far. And I think that that's super unique, you know, because if, let's say, Walt Disney World is your hub, maybe you're working here or whatever the case may be, depending on what you're willing to do for a commute, you have so many different places that you can choose from that will all suit different types of lifestyles. And I think that that's really amazing. It really is. And it's something that you just don't get from a whole lot of places, at least not from a whole lot of places that I've been to. But look, I said that I was going to talk about the pros and cons, so let's get into the downsides of living near Disney. Number one, the traffic. I know you guys have heard about this one before. We've talked about traffic. People talk about traffic all the time. The traffic near Walt Disney World in the general vicinity of Disney is horrific. It really is, especially during certain times of the day or certain times of the year. It can be a nightmare. And of course, there are ways to skirt this, right? Like, this is actually part of living in a vacation destination, no matter where you choose to live. Like, you're going to realize that there are times of the day where you don't leave. You just don't. And then there are times of the day where if you choose to leave, you're going to be in standstill traffic. So there are a lot of adjustments that need to be made if you're going to live in a vacation destination. And one of them is going to be dealing with the traffic, especially during peak seasons. And then, you know, there's all the people who they're tourists. I mean, they don't know where they're going, just the facts, no hate, like I totally get it. They're not necessarily familiar with the roads, and that can just make things feel even more stressful. You can see it here, different times of year. Like, I mark the seasons by the type of drivers that we get. So there'll be this season where everyone is driving way too fast but has no idea where they're going, and then there's another season where people are all driving way too slow, and it's crazy, but it's just part of living in this type of environment. You just have to embrace it and take it for what it is, especially if this is a place that you want to call home. Now, the next downside of living right next to Disney, this is number 2 in that cons column for those of you who are keeping track, is that when you live super close to the magic, you live like right next door, you're kind of far from all of the things that you need day to day. Or maybe it's not day to day, but you need them fairly regularly. Things like a Costco or a car dealership, you know, if you want to bring your car in for maintenance, however often you do that, or, you know, hardware stores, all those things that you might need to make a quick trip to, they tend to be a little bit more out of the way than they would be if you didn't live right next to Disney, which again is a little bit of a matter of opinion, depending on your view on what far away is. Like 30 minutes is what I'm talking about. Whether it's distance or whether it's traffic, you can count on things like that being about 30 minutes away, which isn't really a big deal, like in the grand scheme of things. But if it's not something that you're ready for, it can feel like a major inconvenience. And it's one of those things that if you want to live right by Disney, you have to weigh like the pros and cons. Like, are you someone who wants to be able to make a quick trip to Costco without having to think about it? Then maybe living right next to Disney isn't necessarily for you. I will say that you do have access to things that you're going to need, like a grocery store. But the things that you're probably not thinking about because you're daydreaming about moving to the Magic, your Home Depot, Lowe's, Best Buy even, or your car dealership because you need to get that oil change or do that warranty work. That might take a little bit more time out of your day than you're used to wherever it is that you currently call home. All right, the last downside of living in the immediate vicinity of Walt Disney World, and brace yourself because I know some of you are going to chuckle at me when I say this, but I know that there are a lot of you out there who need to hear it, okay? The area in the immediate vicinity of Walt Disney World is not magical. See, I told you you'd laugh, but really, I think that there are a lot of people out there who, maybe they vacation at Walt Disney World, they've ventured off property a few times, kind of dabbled here and there, but they don't really understand that the immediate vicinity around Walt Disney World in all directions is really touristy. It is a tourist town, even though it touches a number of different towns. Like, they're all kind of touristy. And yeah, there are pockets of nice areas. There are also pockets of definitely not nice areas. And so you really have to understand that when going in, especially if you're considering moving to this area. But also, kind of touching on some of the things that we talked about a second ago, there are a lot of things that you just need to be aware of. There's a lot of adjustments that need to be made if you're thinking about living so close to a touristy area. Taking into consideration things like the traffic, taking into consideration how that's going to require you to change some of your habits or some of the ways that you go through life, So that definitely isn't magical for everybody. And I think that honestly, if there's one thing that really bites people in the behind, it's probably that. Experiencing a vacation destination is one thing. When you're experiencing it from the perspective of a vacationer, it's a very different thing when you're experiencing it as someone who lives there now. And I think that you have to know that it's going to be different going in so that it doesn't take you by surprise and you ultimately don't end up hating the place that you choose to move to. And that actually brings me to a comment that I got just the other day that I also wanted to talk to you about really quick. This kind of goes into the area of like, do I regret moving here? Do I like living here? The person wanted to know if my view of this area changed from like the beginning when I first was looking at moving here until now. And the short answer is no. No, moving here was exactly what I thought it would be, but that's only because I had so much experience living in this type of place before. So before moving here to Florida, and more specifically to the Walt Disney World area, Russ and I, my husband and I, had lived in a number of different places. We had lived in Minnesota in a few different areas. We had lived in Japan in a few different areas, one of which was incredibly touristy, like a very popular tourist destination. And then prior to that, we had lived in New England. And at every stop along the way, we found ourselves taking a really good, honest look at these places that we were in. What did we like about them? What did we not like about them? What were we kind of neutral about? And we had lots of conversations about this. Not only when we were living there, but when we moved on to the next thing, we would talk about how this was different from the place before, and if we could change something, what would we change, just trying to feel out what home looked like for us. So by the time we made the decision to move to Florida and move to the Walt Disney World area, we already had like a long list of boxes that we wanted to check off. We had a long list of things that we wanted out of a place and a long list of things that we definitely didn't. And Florida, the Walt Disney World area, checked a lot of those boxes. It checked a lot of the things that we wanted, and even the downsides. we had experienced before. Like I said, we lived in major vacation destinations in the past. So we knew what we were getting into. We knew the type of adjustments that needed to be made. And the only thing that we really had to think about is how it might be a little bit different for this particular place compared to what it was like in the last vacation destination that we lived in. Because, even though the same types of adjustments are going to be made no matter what vacation destination you find yourself choosing, there are some ways in which it's going to vary. And so our views, and yes, this includes Russ as well, because I did chat with him earlier today so I could chat with you and share his perspective. They didn't really change on this place. We knew what we were getting ourselves into. We knew we were going to have to make some adjustments, and it was just a matter of making those adjustments. Now, there are some areas that we looked into moving to, for example, Celebration, that they just didn't do it for us once we actually got boots on the ground. But we came to that conclusion really quickly, because we already knew exactly what it was that we wanted. So it was pretty easy to just be like, nah. So yeah, our views really haven't changed that much. And to that point, do I regret living here? Do either of us regret moving here? Absolutely not. We love it. Honestly, it was one of the best things that we've ever done because it's exactly the type of place that we want to be. We have the opportunity to be outside, honestly, every single day, which is wonderful. We have fantastic weather, which is really important to us. There's always something going on. All the pros that I mentioned to you. And for us, the cons, the downsides, they don't really outweigh the pros. So it works for us. But it is important to note that it's not going to work for everybody. This is not a lifestyle that is for the faint of heart. It is something that does take a lot of work. It takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of compromise. But whether or not that compromise is going to be right for you and your family is something that I can't tell you. You got to figure that one out on your own. But yeah, I think that about does it for today's discussion. We talked about all the pros and cons of living in the immediate vicinity of Walt Disney World, and I answered an age-old question. Do I regret making the move? No. I love it here. And I'll probably live here for the foreseeable future. But I want to know what you guys have to say. Have you ever considered moving to a vacation destination, maybe to the Walt Disney World area or somewhere else? Tell me where, tell me why, and tell me why you haven't made the move yet. I'd love to hear what you have to say. But for now, I'm off. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. It was good. And I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Until then, bye.